Hello, I am Mrs. Mercer. I am Decatur Township's District Reading Specialist, and today I will be teaching your Level 10 Day 1 Sunday lesson. In the following slides, you're going to see some letters, and the goal is for your child to read each sound aloud. So they will give the sound that that letter makes. Please make sure that they are not adding a schwa to those sounds. For example, when they see B, they should say B, not buh. When they see K, they should say k, not k. Those are just some examples. We need them to clip it. This will help them later when they blend sounds into words. If your student makes an error, you would say, let's trace. Then you're going to say, this is the letter S, which says S, as in the keyword slide. So you would say, this is the letter S that says S, as in sock. And then you would have them trace it. So S says sock. That's incorrect. S says S, S says S, S says S, 3 times. If you have a textured surface for them to do this on, that would be better. If you don't, then tracing will help on any surface. I'm going to go through the slides. You can pause the video if your student needs more time. I'm going to try to go through them a little probably more quickly than what your student could say them. They do not necessarily need to say the keywords afterwards, but if they make an error, you want to prompt them by giving them the keyword. It helps to give them a visual with the letter and the sound. Okay, so now we're to the spell sound section of the lesson. I'm going to say a sound, your child will repeat the sound, and then they're going to say and write it at the same time. This is their student notebook, the format that they would use in school, and they would do this in this section here. Okay, so I'm going to say the sound, they're going to repeat the sound, and then they're going to repeat and write it at the same time. If you have paper at home, you can just write it on the paper in any format you want. If you do not have paper, you could use the Notes app on your iPad and write these in there. Now, if they make an error on the spell sound section, you'll want to stop them right when they make the error. Practice makes permanent. So we want to make sure they're not practicing things incorrectly. So let's just say they had a and we'll talk about what you wanted. I see t. I wanted d. And you'll try to clip it. It's hard with the. So I wanted d. Okay. You'll ask them, can you tell me what letter makes the d sound? I know they sound a lot alike, but this letter makes the d sound. And hopefully they will tell you the answer. Right. D makes the d sound. If you have this, please cross it out and write D for d. Now, write it 2 more times. And if you were in a small group, everybody would write it 2 more times to make it permanent. And while they write them, make sure they're saying D says D. D says D. The way they're writing, auditory. Okay, so that's how you would do the error correction if they make a mistake in this section. First sound. Remember, you'll repeat the sound and then you're going to repeat and write at the same time. You'll do that for all the following sounds. Feel free to pause the video to give your learner more time. Ah. Eh. D. I. Z. Ah. Remember to repeat, then repeat and write. Pause the video to give your learner time to write all of these sounds. I'm going to ask some questions. How many ways can you spell k? How many ways can you spell k? And the answer for that would be C and K. Then I'm going to ask another question. How do you write long A, the A sound, at the end of a word? How would you write the A sound at the end of a word? The answer is AY. Says A at the end of a word. Okay, now they're going to read a column of words from the next page. Make sure they place their fingers underneath the word. If they make an error, you will say again, let's trace. You're going to want them to look at the word that they made the error on and trace each letter, say each sound, and blend underneath. You only have to do one column. If you want to repeat this lesson, I would suggest that you do one column one day, another column the next day, and the last column on a third day. Oftentimes, we need a lot of repetition for this information to become permanently in our brains. So for example, first word is cap. If they made an error on that, you want them to look at the word cap, and then you want them to trace a, p, cap, k, a, p, cap, k, a, p, cap, 3 times. Okay, and that's how you would do the error correction on any of those words that you may use, that you may be using this week or on today's lesson. Can't seem to talk. So pause the video to give your learner time to read whatever column you've chosen for today. Okay. Now we're on to an example of touch spelling. I know this is repetitive for those people that have been doing several lessons with me, but I just want to make sure everybody knows how it works. So touch spelling for somebody who's right-handed. They would have their writing instrument in their hand. They would touch spell with their left hand, following the sequence of a word from left to right. So they would spell tan. Say I gave them the word tan, they would repeat tan. They would touch spell t, a, and then they would touch spell and write on this section coming up. If they were a lefty, they would have their writing instrument obviously in their left hand, and then they would touch spell with their right hand, following the left to right sequence of words. So then they would say t, for tan. So they would start with their thumb instead of their pinky, and that's because our words go from left to right. Okay, so now we're on to the touch spelling, spell words section. Okay, so in class, this is where they would write the words that I am now dictating to them. We will not fill up this entire row, and that is fine. We rarely, if ever, will, except for when we're doing our mastery checks at school. Okay, so I'm going to read the word, and then the learner is going to repeat the word, touch spell the word, and then they're going to touch spell and write. So you're probably going to need to pause after each word to give your student time to do this for each word. Met, day, seed, of, nap, 10, mop, bet, pay, feet, and, mix, pen, dug. Give the student enough time to write the words. Pause the video if you need extra time. Now we're going to check our words to see if they are correct. Okay, so check your words. If you made an error, cross it out. Don't erase it, just cross it out and write it 3 times. Sometimes we can see a pattern with the errors, and that can help guide instruction in the future. So met should have been your first word. Day, seed, of, nap, 10, mop, bet, pay, feet, and, mix, pen, dug. Okay. Now we're on to the spell words, phrases, and sentences section of our lesson. Just make sure, went ahead too far. So I'm going to say a sentence. The learner is going to repeat the sentence. They're going to tap one word per finger, and then they are going to finger tap and write at the same time. So for example, if I gave the sentence, this isn't the sentence, the cat sat. The cat sat. They would repeat, the cat sat. And then they would have one word per finger on the same kind of hand that they do their finger spelling, but they would do the cat sat. So they know that there are 3 words in that sentence. Okay? Now, you're going to do that for this sentence. Listen to the following sentence, repeat, then tap and write. I can feed the red hen. Pause the video, give your child enough time to repeat, tap the sentence, and then tap and write. Make sure they check for proper capitalization and punctuation. Next sentence, fix the rug. Repeat the sentence, tap out the sentence, and then tap out and write the sentence. Pause to give the learner time to do this. Now we're going to check. You should have written, I can feed the red hen. You should have a capital I and a period at the end of the sentence. The next sentence should have been fix the rug. You should have had a capital F and a period at the end of that sentence. If you made an error, cross it out, don't erase, and write it correctly above or below, wherever you have space on your paper. Okay, we're getting ready to learn a new sound. We have W, which says W for wagon. W, wagon. So you will want to trace. W says W. W says W. W says W 3 times. The key word for W is wagon. Say wagon. Okay, now under the introduce new material section, I want you to write W says W 3 times right here in the introduce new material section. Okay, now make sure you pause the video to give them time to do that. Now the learner is going to read these words from the word book. Make sure you put your finger under each word and sound the word out. However, I do not want you to just go w, I, n. You need to say w, I, n, when. Say the word as a whole word. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video. Give the learner time to read those words out loud to you. Make sure they use their finger to guide themselves underneath each word. Now, we're also on the new material section. Again, I'm going to dictate some words. The learner will repeat the word that I give them. They will touch spell each word, and then they will say each sound out loud while writing it on paper in the new material section. The lines down here, the 9 lines in the new material section, is where we would like for those students to write the following words. First word, when. Repeat the word, touch spell the word, then touch spell and write. You will do that for all of the following words. Feel free to pause when your student needs more time. Wax, wet, weep, wig, way. Give the student enough time to write the words, and when they're finished, make sure that they read the list of words back to you that they have just written. If you see an error, have them immediately correct it by crossing it out and writing it correctly above or below the incorrect word. Then the final part of our lesson is the read aloud section. Pause the video to give your student time to read this paragraph aloud.